Yes,
Okay.
please start.
Hello everyone. My name is Avinash, and welcome to the first hands-on session of this school. And today I'm going to talk about the numerical simulations using which you can generate these large-scale structures on your simulation. Something like the image which is shown in the background of this slide. You will get clusters of the dark matter, something looking like that. So in the morning, you have already heard about the structure formation a lot in on the analytical side by Takamada, and yeah, he has explained it very well. So I'm quickly going to brush through those things, and then comes to the I'll come to the numerical part. So let us begin with the picture from the 2DF Galaxy Redshift survey, where the center is the central position is the observer, and as you can see, this axis denotes the redshift, which again tells you about the distance as well as the look back time. Uh, so the every point in this plot represents a galaxy. So now you can imagine by looking at the picture that what large scales we are talking about. So as you can see that the universe near around us is highly clumpy, and it has complex wave-like structures in it. But if you go back in time or far in redshift, you can see that this clumpiness goes down. We have another picture of our universe almost 14 billion years ago, where these um, CMB experiments have measured the universe to be highly homogeneous and uniform with a CMB temperature, mean CMB temperature of 2.7828 Kelvin. However, they still measure some sort of fluctuations in it, which is of the order of micro Kelvin. So you can see that the contrast in the fluctuations are so the contrast of the fluctuations are of the order of 10 to the power minus 6. They are very small. So the question we have right now is, how do we get into this large clumpy structure starting from a universe where the perturbations are very small? So as we have already heard in the previous lectures that the lambda CDM model is the most successful model in describing the background universe on very large scales, and it considers the universe to be filled with the cosmological fluids like the dark energy, dark matter, baryons. There are photons and other relativistic particles, but those are very small in the present universe, and as well as in the redshift, which are relevant for this school. So as you already know that the dark energy causes accelerated expansion, but the thing is that the dark energy starts dominating only in the very recent universe, maybe jet of the order of zero point 0.1 or even less than that. However, there are dark matter and baryonic components in the universe which were dominant in the redshift of our interest, and today we are going to simulate the structure forming due to their gravitational interaction of the dark matter and baryons. Please note that here we are not considering any kind of other interaction like EM interaction, which is possible for baryons. For dark matter, it is fully gravitational, completely gravitational interaction. So the thing is that the dark matter plays a major role in nonlinear evolution of the large scale structures, and we are going to concentrate only on that evolution of the perturbation in the dark matter. You have already seen these equations in the morning, which governs the evolution of the this cosmological fluid, where this rho is the density, v is the peculiar velocity, and pi is the gravitational potential. However, in order to get the actual picture of the nonlinear evolution, you have to solve these equations simultaneously. And as already mentioned by the previous speaker, that nonlinear solution of these equation is not possible. However, there are analytical formulation possible only when this rho I'm saying in the terms of rho, but you can take it as a delta also. So these the perturbation in the matter density and the peculiar velocities are very very small. So in that case, we have only analytical formulation possible. However, in order to get the full nonlinear structure, we need to evolve these equations numerically. And since we are when we are talking about numerical solution, we cannot do it for a continuous field or continuous space. So we need to discretize the space, as well as we need to discretize the fluid as a particle. So here we consider in the today's code, we consider the space to be discretized into grids, and also the dark matter as a dark particles, which again interacts among themselves through gravity, and hence they evolve the structures. So in order to evolve the structure, we need to solve the equation of motion of these particles, like we do in our classical mechanics. We have did in our classical mechanics courses, for considering the gravitational interaction between them. And the equations are like velocity equation, which has some functional form, like dx dA as a function of dA, g of b and a, where a is the scale factor, which is a proxy for the time here. And again, simultaneously you have to solve the force equation, where f is related to the gravitational force. And in order to get f for each and every particle, you need to solve you need to find out the gravitational pull from all other particles also. So as you can see that, if you consider one particle, and if you want to compute the gravitational force from other particle, there will be n operation, and there are such n number of particles in your simulation box, so there will be a total of n square operations. So in this approach, the problem is with the number of operations, so it scales as n square. So if you can imagine, in a standard dark matter simulations, there are billions of particles. So you can imagine that how large the computation number of computational steps will be. And this is only for one time step. In another time step, you have to do it again. So that's why we need to go for a faster method. And there are several many faster methods available out there, like mm, tree method, and then tree pm method, and the p cube method. Some methods are there, but okay, some of them are more accurate, some of them are less accurate, but it depends. And some of them are like more time consuming, some of them are less time consuming. So here in this talk, we will concentrate only the particle mesh approach, which gives you the nonlinear picture of the evolution of the universe, quite accurate. And as well as the time scale is also uh, not large enough. So in what we why we call this method as a particle mesh is demonstrated over here. So we consider the mesh, and there are the distribution of particles over the mesh. So what we do, we solve for the force equation, not for each and every particle. Rather, we solve the forces or the potential on each and every grid, and then we interpolate those forces onto the particles. So these scales the number of operations to of the order of n, which is less than this particle-particle interaction method. And yeah, so in this method, we solve so the equations reduces to this form, where the v is the peculiar velocity, which you can get from this equation, and the this equation is solved using the gradient of the potential, which is available from your Poisson equation, as you have seen in the morning in the talk earlier. So we need to solve all these equations in order to get the non-linear evolution of the matter, practically the dark matter in our universe. So here I show a small the flow chart of our code. There is a rigorous flow chart available in the manual of the code, but this is So let us focus on this right now. So in this analysis, we start with a initial perturbation in the matter density, which is generated at some higher redshift where the density contrast is linear. So why we do that? Because we can we the linear theory, as you have seen, that it is easily solvable. So we have analytical predictions for those initial density field. uh, so we generate the initial density field, the random fields, at very higher redshifts, and using some Zeldovich approximation, which will be covered in the next lectures by Tapomada. By using that, we generate initial distribution of particles in a box, and then using that initial distribution, we perform a step which is called cloud in cell algorithm to generate the density contrast at each and every grid point. So uh, which which is represented over here. So here you can see that there is a particle in the within a voxel. Okay. So if you want to calculate the density at the grid, in order to solve this equation, so what we have to do, we have to divide this particle onto their nearest grid point, and we do this assuming a weight corresponding to each grid nearest to the particle. And the weight is calculated based on the distance between the particle position xm and the grid location. So uh, the nearer the particle to a grid, the large is the density contrast contribution at those grid from that particle. So basically, based on this weight factor, we divide the particle onto the grid, and hence we get the density field corresponding to the particle distribution. And finally, using that density field, we solve this Poisson equation to get the forces on the grid. And using that force, we evolve this, we compute the velocity equation, and hence the this particle position equation to get the new particle location and velocities here. And and again this means this cycle continues. Means again, from the updated particle position, we do a CIC to get the next the density field at the next time step, and it goes on until we reach the last time which we have specified in last time step which we have specified in our code. And wherever it is required, the code gives you the output at that desired time or redshift, you can say. So this is a brief flow chart of our code. So I will go one by one into some of the steps. So initial condition, why the initial condition is this Zeldovich approximation is necessary? Because see, we have divided the particles and the space into the grids, and the particles are located uniformly initially. So if you leave that particle, if you leave the box to evolve, it won't evolve, because each and every particle here, you can see, experience same amount of force in every direction due to this uniform distribution, and hence it won't evolve with time. So that's why we need some slight perturbations, which we generate using the Zeldovich approximation, where we displace every particle from the grid location by an amount which is given by this, where the delta x is some initial Gaussian random field, which has been, for which we know the analytical solutions, for which we know the analytical things. Okay. So using that, we compute the displacement of each and every particle, and then we displace it. So it will some look from here, it will look something like this. So here you can see that there are some overdense region and there are some underdense region, and now we evolve this particle distribution to get the nonlinear density at our desired redshifts. So this we do at a higher redshift, where I have already told you that we where the linear theory is valid, and we can have linear predictions about this field. Okay, so the next step, as you know, note from here, the next step is from the initial condition we generate the density, and the next step is to compute this potential. So in order to do this computation, you need to solve this equation by this differential equation. However, solving this differential equation is cumbersome in the real space, so we go to the Fourier space where this Laplacian inverse will boils down it boil down to an algebraic equation uh, in Fourier space, and we solve the algebraic equation corresponding to each and every Fourier mode, which is denoted by Km. So, and this basically reduces the computational complexity. And finally, so what we do, we basically compute the potential and the force in Fourier space, and finally we back Fourier transform it into the real space. So this Fourier transform thing is done using a package called fast Fourier transform, which I will come in the later slides, uh, which is a very which takes which is also which also takes time which proportional to n log n. So it is not that time consuming. So now, since we have the force or the potential at each and every grid, we can use the two equations which I have shown earlier to compute the position and the velocity of the particle in the next time step. And we do this using the leapfrog integration method, where we compute the velocities uh, at uh, at at a step which is at half step and ahead of the this xi. So I denotes the time step basically. So we compute the velocity at next half step, and using this velocity we compute the position at the next full step, and this continues till the end. So using this we update the particle position and velocity using these expressions. And also at the same time we takes care of something called periodic boundary condition, which is applied to keep the particles within the box. So suppose that there is a particle which is at some corner of the box, and some velocity, some force has been applied onto that, due to which it gone out of the box towards that side. And and uh, yeah and and what we do, we apply the periodic boundary condition to incorporate this outgoing of the particle as the incoming of another particle onto from another side. So we use this in order to keep the particles within the box, and it is also necessary to simulate the bulk properties of the matter distribution and avoid the edge effects of the box. Okay, so that is all about the working of the code. Now I will straightforward go to the code. So you can download the code is available publicly on the GitHub, and you can use this link to download the code from there. Uh, so I will show you how to download. So let me break the PPT here. Go step by step. So, okay, let me share my full screen first. Ah,
Hello, Abhinash.
yes.
I have something to ask. So you told about giving weight for different grids based on the distance from the particle, right? In the
Yes.
algorithm. So
Hmm.
I'm still confused about the construction of the grid. So what if there are multiple particles inside this box? Is there a possibility like
It
that?
will be additive. The density corresponding to every particle will be additive on the grid. If there,
Okay, okay.
yeah, corresponding to this particle, you compute the weight. You assign the densities to these grids, and you go on to
Hmm.
the another particle. You again compute the weight, and then again add the corresponding density to the grids.
Okay,
Again,
so it will be a sum of the contribution from
yeah,
different
from
particles.
different
Sure.
particles.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Hello, excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a question.
Yes.
So, in what environment is this simulation being run?
So currently we have developed it for the Linux operating system, and this is a C code written in C.
Right. And is there like some kind of uh, like some kind of software where you can visually look at the simulation and get the observations, something like that? So,
Uh, I will show you how to look at into the output of this code. Means you can plot those things. I have the code, and I'll share it with all of you, so you can run the codes and you can visualize that what is happening. I'll show
right.
you a video also at the end of this talk.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, so you can download from this website, and the link is given here. I will share the slide so you will get the link. So let me show you how to download. So it is hosted by one of our organizers, Dr. Rajesh Mandal. So you can go to Nbody. Uh, okay, the link I have given here is for so actually you can see that there are two branches here, right? So I prefer this one, the thread branch, because in some cases when you run your simulations onto the departmental servers or some other servers, where you have restrictions, of course you cannot run the main branch, the code in the main branch. You have to specify, because the handle to specify the number of cores is not there. So I'll prefer this. So you switch to the threads branch, you go to the code, and you can download the zip from here. Okay. In another way, you can just copy it, this link, and as you can see that it is written, you open your terminal. So I will go to the terminal here. I will open this folder. Okay, let me minimize this. So as you can see that, so you can copy that, this line. So you just click onto this, it will be copied, and now you can go to the terminal. You can just type git clone. For this threads branch, you have to do write this one, branch threads, and then you paste this link and just enter. You can see that it will clone the Nbody code to your directory, and you can see that it is here. So if you open that, you can see that there are number of files, and documentation is also available with this. So you can go through the documentation. All the equations which I have shown you are there in the documentation, and some of the calculations are also there. Okay. So and there is a README file here to guide you to how to install or how to use this. The main file in this code is the Nbody comp, which does the computation stepwise, as I have mentioned in the flowchart. Okay, and the function. So you can see it. It is here, take time. So it's a big code. So you can see that there are some reading input, and then some initializations are there, and then finally there is the Zeldovich step is there. Then yeah, then you can update your V for the first time, and then it comes the starting the Nbody block. It says the starting Nbody block here starts the loop, and it runs through the time, and it loops over the time and finally give you the output here. But these functions which are defined over here are written in this, mainly written in this file which says Nbody funcs, and there are some other C files also with the functions written in it. So you can go through that if to understand what is written there and how it is, if you want to develop something. There are some header files also, Nbody h and power.h. These things, these all files need to be there in one folder while compiling. You cannot move it somewhere else. And there, you can see that there is one input nbody comp file. So this file is also required for you just to tweak with the input of the nbody. So I will come to this later. So now I have shown you how to download the file. Okay, how to download the code, and then we will go to the step how to install it. So before installing, there are some prerequisite. As I have already mentioned, that the code depends on the fast Fourier transform package. So you have to install this into your system, specifically the FFTW3 version, not FFTW2. And while installing, so you have to keep in your mind that you enable these flags for FFTW. So actually I'm not going to do that because uh, I have already installed it in my system, so I'm not going to mess with that installation. You can see that if you click onto this, you will redirect it to the FFTW page. You can download this tar file from here, and you can unpack that tar file and follow this installation guide in order to install this FFTW in your system. Once that is done, we can straightforward go to the compilation. So in order to compile this code, you need one file which is very necessary, which is this make file. This will make the code. Yeah, this file. So this file uh, is run by a command called make, and this compiles all of the files within this directory, and then finally link it to give you an executable which you can run in order to simulate the universe, simulate the perturbations in the universe. Okay, so yeah, if so, don't try to do any editing here unless necessary, except for these two lines. So here you can see that something is defined as link library and include. So if you install your FFTW, uh, sorry, this FFTW in your root root as a root. So in that case, you don't need to change anything here. But if you install the package in some other local directory, then you have to specify the directory path over here, here and here, for the library and for the include one. These paths would be replaced this much, user local this thing. Okay, so I have already highlighted this part here in the slide for your convenience. So once you are done with that, you save this file, and you just need to compile, run the make command here, and what you want to make is the nbody comp. Sorry, okay, I'm not in that folder. You go to the folder of nbody. Here you have the files. You have the make file. You can see here. You just type make and do write nbody comp. So see, you can, your code is getting compiled, and finally it is being linked to something called nbody comp. So now if you ls, you can see that this file has been this file is generated here, nbody comp, which was not there earlier. So this is the main executable which you have to run in order to get the get the output at different rates in the dark matter density field. Okay, so before running this command, I'd like to go to the input parameters. So this is necessary while in order to run your simulations according to your need. You have to change this file. Okay, so here are some numbers, and what are those numbers is written over here. Okay, the explanation is given here. So the first number here is the seed. And what does this seed do? Seed basically is required when you generate the initial Gaussian random field for your to start your evolution, nonlinear evolution. There is something called n bin, which decides the number of bin for the power spectrum. So the power spectrum is something which you can compute out of from a random distribution, or the random density distribution, random field basically. uh, so this power spectrum basically specifies the clustering present in the random fields. So this will give you the clustering properties of the dark matter density field which you have generated. So I'm not going into the details of the power spectrum. It will be covered in your in the theory lectures. So there is something called NBIN which will divide the accessible Fourier space into some number of bins and give you the average power spectrum into that bin. If you increase the bin, you will get more number of you can increase or decrease as you like. The next one is the number of threads. So since I have mentioned it that this is okay, so sorry, I think I forgot to mention. So I've written it somewhere. So this code is basically parallelized. So this doesn't run on only one core of your computer. This can run into multiple cores of your computer in order to gain the speed. You can still run it on single core, but you will the speed will be less. So this is massively parallelized using an API called OpenMP. So for that, you have to specify some number of threads, and which is given by this parameter over here. I have specified it to 2 because I have only 4 cores here. So in order to play safe side, I have just defined it to 2. You in your server you can define this number to be whatever you like, and whatever is permitted by your server administrator. The next number here, the next row here is for dedicated for the cosmological parameters. The first number is the small h, which is 0.6704 from one of the paper of the Planck. We have taken this number. And the next one is the omega matter. Then next one is the omega lambda, and then the spectral index of the power spectrum, which Planck measures. The next one is also dedicated to the cosmological parameters. This the first one is the omega baryon, and next is the sigmoid values. So you can change these numbers in if you want to simulate universe with other cosmologies. The next is the grid specification of your simulation. So here I have taken only 256 grids because the RAM in the laptop is limited. So generally we take something of the order of 1,000 or 2 to 3,000, but that depends on the limitation by your RAM, how much size of the grid it can accommodate. And there is something called fraction field. Okay, so in order to explain this, I think we should go to this plot, this graph over here. So fraction field means so if you look at this picture, the fraction field for this grid is 1, because each and every particle is placed just at the adjacent um, grid points. But if you fill your particle by leaving one of the adjacent grid point, then NF will be 2. And if you leave two of the grids blank and then again place your next particle, then it will be NF3. So we basically take this NF to be 2. You can increase it or you can decrease it to 1. So this has to be integer. You can increase or decrease it to be 1, but at 1 there is some problem with there is some issue due to Nyquist criteria. So we avoid that and we take it to 2 in order to be at safe side. So I would recommend that you just keep it to 2. So your number of particles will be how much? 256 into 256 into 256 divided by 2 cube, because in each direction you are leaving one of the adjacent grid and placing your particles. Next parameter is LL, which decides the grid size of your box in megaparsec. So here we have taken 0.07 megaparsec, which is 70 kiloparsec. Basically. The next line are some flags: output flag and PK flag. So output flag one means your output will be in grid unit, and if you keep it anything other than one, it will provide you in the physical unit, co-moving unit, megaparsec. PK flag 1, if you keep the PK flag to be 1, it will compute the power spectrum of your of your particle or the density distribution. Otherwise, it doesn't. So if you require power spectrum, then you keep it 1, or do not keep it 1 if you don't need the power spectrum of the density field. So here I have just keep it 1 in order to demonstrate which file it will, what are the files it generates. Here is A initial and delta A. So A initial is basically the initial time, or initial scale factor. So here we have taken initial scale factor to be 0.008, which if you compute the corresponding Z will be 124. So we generate our initial Gaussian random field at Z 124, which is
Hello,
quite,
hello,
sorry.
Abhinash.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mhm.
Can I know again why you keep the fraction fill as 2? What is the reason?
There is some Nyquist. It has to do with some Nyquist sampling, right? So if we keep it at 1, the sampling, uh, it the sampling is there is some problem with the Nyquist thing. Actually, I don't remember exactly, but if you plot the
Uh,
initial file, it initial
May I
particle. Huh, huh.
may I add something?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so you are calculating the force on the grid, right? So
Huh, huh.
the force resolution is decided by the grid. So
Grid
that is
size.
0.07, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
And now, so you are extrapolating those force component of the force to the particle position, right? Now, uh, so if you choose it to be 1, then it will so at the scale at you are calculating the force, it will be wrong because of this so approximation, right? It's an approximation, right? At the smallest scale it will be wrong. Now if you calculate it, if you calculate the force on a higher resolution and extrapolate it to a lower resolution, and so then it would be more correct, right? So the man, so at the smallest scale, to be correct at the smallest scale, we need to choose. So we need to choose more than one. Better if you choose four, it will be even better.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I will resume. This is the initial scale factor. The next one is the delta A, which is the time step by which your simulation, the loop, the time in the loop increases. And at the end, we have in output, which decides that how many number of redshifts you want the output, and then there is a list of redshifts. So I want the output at to be at 13, 10, 8, and 7. So there are 4. So I have kept it 4 and then these numbers. So and these numbers are reasonable for the reionization simulations. So let me go to this code here. So here you can see that at the beginning of this main section of this code, it reads this input file from the parent directory, and yeah, it stores everything into that, and then it performs the calculation and run over this Z loop. Okay, so that is all about the input parameters. So if you can change your input parameter according to your setup, how you want to simulate, from where you want to start, and what kind of time step you want to keep. And yeah, don't forget to keep it in the same folder where the n-body executable is located. So I will run my code with the default input which I have set. So you just, in order to run, you just need to type this dot slash embody comp and you run it. You can see that it prints a number of things, that the dark matter. So since we have discretized the dark matter particle, dark matter field to particles, each particle will have mass, and here it is of the order of 10 to the power 8 solar mass. The length of the box is how much, 18 megaparsec, which is not cosmological. So yeah, so the thing is that due to the limitation of my laptop, I'm running a small box, but in case of cosmological simulation you need to run a bigger box, at least one order of magnitude larger than this. So that means there will be either you increase the del sorry either you increase the delta L of your simulation, this number, or you increase the number of grids in order to do that. Then it is printing number of threads just to confirm you. Then there are some normalization constant and 1 over rho b inverse in order in units of particles. So since we have kept nf to be 2, rho b inverse is 8, basically uh, 1 over 2 cube, inverse of 1 over 2 cube. So it is 8. And now it is printing some time, so how much time it is taking to do these things. So you can see it's still running. It will take some time, at least 2-3 minutes. So in the meantime, I will go to
Sir,
this slide. Sorry.
sir, I
Yes.
have a question. Is it possible that if we install all the packages in a Windows OS, will it run? Will this code run?
Windows OS, there are some something called this. You use, what do you use to run the code in Windows? Have you run it? Run any
Actually,
C code?
right now I do not usually don't run C codes, but before that I used to use Dev C++ or something like that.
Okay. Then some of
Can I
some
make a comment?
yes.
Yeah, so it is highly recommended you don't run in Windows machine,
On Windows
run in
machine, yeah.
Linux.
Huh.
When I say highly, it is highly. You can add highly.
And not even in the MacBooks also, because this version, the libraries which we are using, which we have defined here in the make file, are corresponding to the Linux system. So,
Hello.
and the code,
So like you are saying like it's not recommended to run it in a MacBook. So I now operate on MacBook, and how can, if I want to run this code, how can I do that? Like what extra thing I have to do?
in MacBook, you are not gonna to simulate this nonlinear evolution for a cosmological volume, right? I'm just showing. I'm just running it in my laptop to demonstrate you. We cannot run it on our laptop for large volumes. So in that case, you need servers to run where the RAM is quite high, say of the order of,
Like high performance computers.
yeah. And
Okay.
those are generally, the clusters are generally people install Linux in those clusters. Mhm.
Learn code in Python.
Sorry.
Do you have an equivalent code like this in Python?
No, because if you write this kind of code in Python, it will be slower, even slower. This is a compiler based code, right? Language C. So here the things are getting compiled first and then make it an executable and then run it to achieve the speed of this kind of simulation. If you run it in, if you write this code in Python, the speed will be much less compared to the C code. Uh, but one can wrap this code using Python wrapper, and in that case you can create some sort of GUI based thing where you give your inputs and by your hand as you do in Python, and then this C code will run in the background. So that is possible, and yeah, we are planning to do that. So if you are interested, or if anyone is interested to develop this code, you can just write back to us and we can talk on to this. Wrapping is a good thing. Nowadays people are using Python wrappers. And so now, yeah, you can see that the code has run. It has taken about 4 minutes and 45 seconds only, because this is a small volume code. So let us see what it has generated. Okay, so there are a lot of files, so you will get lost into this, but I will point out that yeah, it generates basically this output n body files at these redshifts which we have specified: 13, 10, 8, and 7. So these are basically binary files. Don't try to open it just by clicking, because it won't open. If you open this, it will show some characters. You will not be able to read that. And if you remember, we have kept the input flag, sorry, power spectrum flag 1. So it has also generated the power spectrum file over here, PK input, which is the power spectrum which we use to generate the initial field. So I'm not going into the details of the power spectrum. It will be covered into the lectures in the coming days. So you will get to that. The power spectrum is basically one thing where you can check and verify that you are doing something which is correct, and you are not getting anything random from your code. So I will just show you plot. I'll plot one power spectrum and show you that. So in the morning, set log SC. I will plot it in the log scale. So we'll just plot. I will start with the input file, PK input power spectrum. 1:2 with line. Title will be okay. So if you open this power spectrum file, you can see there are 4 columns. So these are the wave numbers, average wave numbers, or the k in the Fourier space, at which we have these power spectrum values computed from the particle distribution, and this is computed using the linear theory, and these are the number of modes within that bin. So if you remember, we divide our k space or the Fourier space into the bin to compute the power spectrum. So anyway, don't go into the details of this. So what we want to do here, we want to compare what we get from the simulation with what the analytical theory predicts. So as you can see, if I plot it, so I'll plot the first column with 2, with the title simulations, and then again from the same file, I will plot the third column, 9, title analytical, or the linear theory. You can see that both of the line basically overlaps. There are some fluctuations that is due to the numerical the resolution of the box, but you can see that it is practically overlapping, so it is good. I mean, the first thing is okay. Now I will plot some of the outputs which we get from the n-body simulations. So let's say I plot for 13, redshift 13. So here you can see that on small k values, so this represents the k values. Small k values represents very large scales. So on large scale, the fit with the linear theory, the simulation and the linear theory kind of agrees, very close. But on small scales, that means large k values, you see that there is a deviation, and simulation is predicting more power compared to the analytical, which is expected in case of nonlinear evolution, because it has been already mentioned in linear theory, the fluctuations doesn't grow much. I don't think it is mentioned. Anyways, so in linear theory the perturbation doesn't grow much, but in nonlinear theory it grows at a faster. So there you expect more number of structures, collapsed structures compared to the linear theory. So this was all about the power spectrum. Next, let us visualize the output boxes. So, yeah, okay. I have another code which can read this file, the output n-body file. So let me copy those output n-body file from there. I will move this. So don't worry, this I will share these folders with you at the end of the class. Okay, so let me switch to the another folder, n-body tools. Yeah. Okay, fine. So here you can see those the similar files are there. The input file has to be the same which you have used in the n-body tools. So I think it is the same file. Yeah, for so it is the same file. And the main file which will read these outputs are this read multiout.c. So you need to compile that file, make read multiout. You can see that it is compiled with the same setup uh, 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 which we did in the n-body, for the n-body. And if you try to run this, okay, sorry, why I'm minimizing this. So if you try to run this, let me clear. If you try to run this like n-body, read multi-out, it won't run because it requires an input from the user while running. So read multi-out and then scale factor. Okay, so not to get confused with the scale factor of the A which we have seen earlier. This is something. This is basically scaling factor. Actually, we scale the grids. So if you put the number 1, it will generate the density from the particle distribution on the same grid which has been used in the n-body. If you put it 2, it will make the grid coarser by 2 times. So now, so that means if so in our simulations we have used 256 grids. So if I put the number 2 here, it will generate the density on 128 cross 128 cross 128 grids. So this is just to reduce the resolution. So if you run this, it will again print how many number of particles are there, what is the DMM. It is, there's some problem with this. Okay, oh, it is in the unit of H inverse. Oh, no, okay, fine. So now you can see that there are there were four output files corresponding to this. Corresponding to 4, it has run 4 times. So there 13, 10, 8, and 7. And there are density files generated. So density files are also written in binary. Okay, so I have written it in particular format where we are first writing the n1, n2, n3, your delta L, and then we are writing the density at each and every grid point serially. Okay, so in this format it has been written, and you can use any other plotting software like Python to read this file and uh, in the similar format and plot the slices. So here I have written a Python code to read that file, density file. You can see that there is the density file. If you change the name, you have to change this line here, and you run this file in order to generate the slice, in order to plot the slices from the 3D cube. So I will just show you once. So this is written in Python 3. So just write Python 3 and then slice plot.py. If you put this, it won't. What happened? What happened? And sorry. Python 3 slice plot.py. What is happening? These things.
It's waiting for your argument.
No, no, no. Yeah, it's waiting, but it should not wait. It will just plus this that you need Redshift. So it will plot only one file at a time. So yeah, that is what I want to show you. So you just put, let's say, 8. You want to see the plot from the 8. So now it will take. I think it is actually my RAM is not that much, so the zoom and these things are creating a problem. Yeah, you see, it started running, and yeah, it printed that you have 128 grid, 128 by 128 by 128, and your LL has been scaled by 2 factors, so it's 0.14 now. And here you can see your plot. Sorry, yeah. So you can see that there are density. Actually, this color bar is quite high. So if I reduce that to a bit, let's say from 14, you can see the structures clearly. From 15, let me reduce it to, let's say, 10. Uh, so you can also, if you want to plot the particle positions, you can also do that. There is a section in that read. So now so there is a section in the read multi-out file which I have commented. I will show you that. So if you uncomment that portion, you can write the particle locations straightforward into your ASCII file, which you can open by clicking it, and you can plot that scatter plot using any of your plotter, whichever you like. So here you can see now filaments are there, and it is quite more prominent now. So you can see that, yeah. So this is for z equal to 8. I will show z for z equal to 10. In that case, you can see that the the clumpiness is even less compared to that. If you can remember this, yeah. So now you can see that there here was a huge patch. Now the patch size is very small. So and also the intensity is even less, which indicates that the clumpiness is less here compared to the previous one. So I have a video. Actually, I have made the animation to show you how the things are growing. So I will play that. Yeah, here. So you can see that initially, so you cannot see anything right now because fluctuations are there. They are very tiny compared to these color bars. Uh, so if I let it grow, you can see that redshift is changing from here. So if I let it grow, you can see that you can see the the portions with the large over density gets more clumpier, and the other parts, why it is going like this. Okay, you can see it if you focus on any of these here or here. You can see that it is attracting the distribution from now. It is smooth now, so it is attracting, and they are collapsing. They are collapsing into large clumps of dark matter. So these things are what I have plotted is the dark matter density distribution on the grids. So okay, that is, I think that is all for today. So in the next class, I will go to finding the halos from this dark matter distribution. which is required for your reionization simulations. So for the time you can do these things by yourself, and there are some tasks in the slides, so you can go through. You can try to do that task on your own and check that how it is going. So there's one task that is to check the time, how the time. So if you remember, the code is printing the time at the end. So you can check how the time is scaling with the number of grids. If you increase the number of grids, so I would recommend, if you are doing it in your laptop, then don't go for a larger number of grid. You try with smaller grids like 32, 64, 256, maybe 512 for some laptops where the RAM is larger and greater. And you just plot the time with the n grid and see how it is scaling. Also, you can check the time by varying the delta A. So the delta A in the input file, if you remember it here, if you decrease the delta A, the total time taken will be increased, and you can see that how it is changing by changing the delta A thing. So yeah, I'd like to stop here and take questions if you have any, or we can discuss.
Okay, Avinash, there is one question from Ritobroto. If we download all the necessary packages and run the code accordingly in a Windows operating system, is it
Oh, he
possible?
already asked, I guess.
Already asked.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. I already asked it.
Okay, fine. Yes. Any further questions?
So the advice is that you don't run it on any other operating system except for Linux.
Yeah. So just a comment on this. So basically, these codes are written for the operating systems which are based on Unix. Okay, Linux is the most popular operating system which is based on Unix. You have other operating systems also, including Mac and other things. But then, even if you are trying to run it in any Unix operating system, there are subtle differences. Even if you go from one version of Linux to the other version, or if you go to Mac, there will be even a difference. So the makefile that it provides, which links wherever your libraries are and wherever your code are to make the executable, that you may need to tweak depending on what operating system you are working within Unix. It will not work for Windows because Windows has a completely different architecture. It is not recommended to run in Windows because the memory management and the processing management in Windows is very poor to do anything as serious as this. It's also that you don't have a Python version of this code because of the same reason that Python is an interpreter language, which if you try to use to do a very massive calculation, it takes so much resources that you cannot do considerable amount of calculation with the same amount of memory and the processor that. So it's always better to go down in the language category, go down to something like C, or people used to use Fortran also earlier. Even people use those to do these calculations.
Again, to Ritobroto, means if you want to run it in your Windows system, you can install some virtual environment of Linux, and then you can run it. But still, the RAM issue is there. The memory management issue is still there. Since it is managed by Windows, so it is still there.
Okay.
And Avinash, there is one question from Anindita. Can you please repeat what does output flag signifies in the N-body code?
The output flag in the in-body code is, okay, if you keep it 1, then your output will be in grid units, not in the physical units. That is the difference. So if you want it in grid unit for some reason, you can have it, but generally people would like to print their particle position in the physical unit. in megaparsec.
Any further questions?
Yes, I
Okay.
had one.
Yeah.
So,
Please go ahead.
Avinash, is it recommended to keep the grid sizes in power of 2 always? Why it is? If it is yes, then why so?
Okay, so this was a restriction in the earlier version of FFT. So FFT is basically, how can I say?
But how
The fast
frequently
one-
do you need to do an FFT?
Yeah, FFT you need to do frequently because you see it is a particle mass based code. So every time at every step, when you are calculating the force onto the grids using some particle distribution, you need to go to the Fourier space. So you generate the particle distribution and the density in the real space, then you go to the Fourier space, compute the force, and then come back to the real space. So this goes on.
Yeah.
This is an important step, important key step in the code. For that, you need FFT in order to make the things faster.
That is fine, but do I need it to be 2 to the power something?
The 2 to the power thing is recommended by the FFT people because the FFT thing work in some tree algorithm where they go on dividing the computation by a factor of 2 until they hit the smallest number of 1 or something. So they divide the computation work to the number of processor which has been allocated. Here the number of threads. So since
You have a parallelization on FFT.
Yes, FFT is parallelized. Yeah, that is why I have recommended it to install with the threads. So with the flags. Here you can see that it enables threads in OpenMP.
So one thing can be still done is if you give a size like 128 plus 64, if the grid size is like that, then also FFT will do with the same efficacy. If you do some 128 plus 32 plus 1, then it may have.
Yeah, so that
No.
is what.
No, the smallest integer. So if it is 2, then is the maximum.
I guess
maximum
smallest
efficacy.
prime number, Rajasthan.
Yes, smallest prime number. Yes.
Prime number.
2 is the
2
smallest
or
prime
3
number.
is
So
3 is also fine, I guess.
yeah,
in
but
some cases.
yeah,
but it's
means
not recommended.
the fastest you can achieve with 2.
With 2, yeah, in the power of 2.
No, see, the point is if you're so you have a certain number of nodes allocated to it, right? Now say you allocate 12 nodes. Okay. So then when FFT divides it, it will be running 12 parallel processes at the same time, right? So it is not necessary that always if you have 256, you will, to the power n, with parallel FFT, you will find it of maximum use. Because they will be running 12 processes at the same time, 12 plus 24, and in the next stage, it will run only 8 processes. The other 8 processors will be free at that time. They will not be doing anything. Okay.
No.
What they write in
that
their
way
documentation, they assume that your number of threads is also at 3 power n. So there is a combination of these two which decides the efficacy.
Okay, you need to go through the FFT documentation, but what I remember from their documentation is that the smallest integer is the best.
Smallest prime.
Smallest prime, yeah.
So there are 2 more questions in the chat box. Aman Power is asking, how about running in dual boot mode?
Yeah, that is fine. Dual boot means you log into your Linux and then you run it.
Okay. Yeah. And there is one more question from Shashwat Dasgupta.
Even I have dual boot.
Okay. Yeah. So Shashwat Dasgupta is asking, do we use BIT or BIS?
What using?
DIT or DIF. I don't understand what it stands for, but
Yeah, even I don't understand.
yeah.
Where is his question? I cannot see it.
So
Yeah,
the
he
chat
raised
box.
the hand. Please.
Sir, this is Shashwato.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
please go
I
ahead.
was asking whether we use decimation in time or decimation in frequency in case of the FFT that we're using here.
Here we do in a space.
Okay, that means DIS that we're using here.
Okay, I don't. I have heard this terminology first time. You are saying dividing into time or dividing into space or frequency. That is.
Yeah. That was my question.
We are doing it into the in the space.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay. It looks like there are none. So thanks, Avinash, for this hand-on session and conducting
Welcome.
it. Yes, and also thanks to Tapamay Ghoshkarkar for conducting the first lecture of this session. So hopefully we will see Tapamay Ghoshkarkar again next day, and also you. So let's conclude for this day. And yeah, so thanks to all and all the participants.
Yeah,
attending.
I will
Yes,
share
Marcus.
these things. I will share this material via Google Drive, so they will get the participants will get that the plotting code
Please
and those
put
things.
the links
Slides
to the
also.
Google Drive. Yeah, everything in the Google Drive, and share the link.
Yeah,
to
I will share the link of the
Slack.
Google Drive.
As
So
well as
one thing, so there was one request from Prasunda that can you wait for a little discussion? So I think discussion can go on. I think if you want. So yeah, so I'm continuing. So yeah, Prasunda, you
Okay.
can ask. Yeah.